Hello, good evening. Welcome back to Season 10 of this PlayStation 5 GT3 Championship on AOR. We are here today for round 3 at Suzuka. After some damp conditions last time out at Zandvoort, proving very challenging with the tyre temperatures struggling a lot in that race. We are back this week, probably into a dry race. No guarantees tonight. There is a small chance of rain, but likelihood is this one will be dry. 23 drivers here for this one tonight. Just under 10 minutes left to go in practice before we get into qualifying. And some very competitive times being put up at the end of this practice session. We have joint championship leaders as it stands. Michelin Man and Tinus level on 142 points, having had a win and a second place each. Michelin Man winning last time out, and will be looking to try and make that back-to-back wins and take the outright championship lead. But several other names will also be in the hunt. Jazzman yet to win a race this season. Off the podium last week at Zandvoort as well, P4. He will be, I'm sure, looking to try and get a win this season. And a very strong time from him in practice here so far. Looks like Don Michaelo just cruising round at the moment. Sorry, just double checking all the audio working correctly. I have managed that in round 1 to start talking and realise I was muted the entire time. So just making sure that's all okay. With 5 minutes left in practice, I'm sure plenty of drivers doing a quali run at this point just to see what the pace is like. Everyone, I'm sure, looking at the relative pace and where they stand at the end of this practice session, although not always fully representative. We'll always have some drivers that don't do their quali runs and then jump up the order from their practice finishing position, but always interesting to see where it stands. The usual suspects at the top in this practice session: Jazzman, Michelin Man, Tinus, P1, 2, 3, and I'm sure there is a strong chance that the 3 of them will be the top 3 in qualifying, but do not rule out other names. PS with a strong time already in practice here. Don Michaelo, Skov have both shown pace in the Lamborghini this season. Bonival in the McLaren as well, missing last race, but strong showing in the opener at Spa. And there may be someone else that can get their names up there and into the top of the standings for qualifying. and us managing to close the gap to Jazzman with his qualifying runs here. I'm sure that has to be a qualifying run. 58s is very strong pace around here. Both the Ferrari and the Lamborghini, strong cars around this track. McLaren not too far off. I think the Porsche runners will be those struggling more today. And we also have, once again, the lonely runner in his singular Mercedes, ignoring my car that will once again be sat in the pit lane. Last 1 or 2 laps for all of these drivers before we get to qualifying. Still no valid lap for Mr. Moosington in this practice session, which we will need that to change for qualifying, otherwise that will look like a back row start. A very well liked track by the drivers. Suzuka always provides a lot of intrigue and interest, whether the racing's close or not. Very challenging through the S's up through Dunlop, and there are overtaking opportunities round the lap, into the hairpin and down into the Casio Triangle chicane. The main opportunities, turn 1 obviously, a little bit of a faster corner coming off not the longest of straights, so it would require a very good run out the last corner, but qualifying will be relatively important here. A lot of the drivers back in the pits already, getting their setup ready for qualifying, making sure they are set to head out of the pit lane as soon as possible. 15-minute qualifying session, so plenty of time to set a lap, but always good to get out as early as possible, get that banker run in, and make sure that you can set the time you know you're capable of. Mr. Moosington's last opportunity to set a valid lap in practice. I'm sure he knows from some invalid laps where his pace is anyway, but still always nice to get a valid one on the board, otherwise a little bit of a confidence not going into qualifying, I'm sure. Pren is the last car that will either invalidate or come around to complete his lap, and then we will get into the business end of this race. have to wait and find out and just... Well, we find out now as Pren runs right, and qualifying will indeed be dry. So, who's going to be first out? We've had Michelin Man first out on track at the first 2 rounds, and once again, Michelin Man straight out onto track, and clear air for Michelin Man. Jazzman just behind. And who have we got following that? Looks like Matthew out of the pit lane, 4th on track. Can't recognise the Ferrari out 3rd. Not sure who that is at the moment. But once again, Michelin Man looking for that clean air for that first run in qualifying. He's done that successfully round 1 and 2. So no issues with traffic, as we have still cars filtering out the pit lane further back, giving themselves a bit more space. Lyric Sim Racing, 3rd car on track. One of the new drivers for this season. Has had a reasonable showing so far. Didn't start last race, but a 6th place first time out at Spa, so we'll look to see if he can replicate that kind of performance today. And we'll jump back to Michelin Man to see as he comes round to begin his first flying lap. Usually the first lap, not the key one, tyres still warming up a bit, getting up to pressure. First lap tends to be a few tenths off, but still good to get one in the bag. So Michelin Man opens up down to turn 1. Nice and careful, hitting apexes, not pushing too hard on this opening run. All looking well under control through the S's on this first lap. Man behind, nice enough gap, and we'll be watching that gap closely to see the relative pace between himself and Michelin Man on this opening run, but also I'm sure very focused on his own lines and just putting his own lap together. Down towards 130 arc for the first time in anger. Quite a lot of curb for Michelin Man there, Jazzman taking a little bit less. And what are we opening up with here? Michelin Man already going right to the inside for that shortest run to the line. And straight into the 1 minute 59s, but Jazzman almost 2 tenths quicker straight away. Times coming in behind the S-Vids within a second of the front runners, Bonneval just behind that. So we have quite a few that have invalidated laps already on this opening run. Let's see, Tinus round the back of the circuit, so completely separate from the main pack, got himself a lot of space here. He'll be wanting to open up with a mid 59 probably, similarly to Jazzman and Michelin Man. And get straight in that fight for pole position. Obviously, was a pole position for Tinnis last time out at Zandvoort, but that mistake on lap 1 cost him the chance for the win. He did make a comeback all the way through to P2. He'll be looking to go one better again like he did first time out in Spa. What's his opening lap? And that is him starting a lap, so just a little bit behind on putting that first lap together. And who else have we got in there? So still a big gap, P2 to P3, but down in the middle of the pack, always tighter, and plenty still to set lap times. Mr. Moosington, having not set a lap throughout practice, up in P5 early on, so maybe not affect him at all, that lack of a valid practice lap. Ride on board with Tinnis through the hairpin, nice and tight to the apex. Is possible to run a bit wider there and get the launch off the corner without losing too much time, but Tinnis choosing the inside line. Up to Spoon, avoiding the curb on the entry. It's very easy to just lose the car on those curbs. Exit curb, not so much, use all of that. And down the back straight, heading towards 130R. Very quick corner, but still a decent lift needed, trying to run as far to the outside as possible without clearing track limits and invalidating the lap. A little bit deep into the hairpin, so there will be definitely time to find in the third sector for Tinnis subsequent to this lap, but see, he'll be definitely hoping to get himself into P3 at least for the time being, and that is P2, so I say definitely some time on the table through the final chicane, so Tinnis will be happy with that as an opening effort. And all 23 drivers have a lap time on the board already, so no stress for anyone there about just making sure they get that lap in before the end of the session. Bleeding Sunrise coming down into 130R, very aggressive on the curbs, giving it everything here. A little bit of a distraction in front, but will not be holding him up at all. Oh, and a lot of curb on the exit of the Casio Triangle, but and that is an aborted lap for Bleeding Sunrise. Hit 242. Down in P19 at the moment, coming across the line. Can he improve? Yep, up to P16, just over 2 seconds off the pace. Guido Christ here down in P20. You would expect him to find some more pace than that. Like I said earlier, I think the Porsche runners tonight will not have the easiest time of things, but at the moment we have Scott and Bleeding Sunrise up in 6th and 7th, so that will be Guido Christ's target. Usually around a similar pace to those two, so he has a second and a half or so to find to bridge that gap. I would imagine that was not a representative lap time from Guido Christ so far, as he comes through the Degners, well within track limits there, and all the way out to the outside of the curb, but that will be perfectly legal. As we have the Ferrari facing the wrong way, 333, that's Joe Powell, and that is getting very close on the rejoin Needs to be very careful not to impede other drivers' laps. I think he has got going again and got out of the way. So let's rejoin Guido Christ and see what he can do through the end of this lap. And he'll be hoping to make a jump into that top 10. Quite conservative through 130R there, a little bit more track on the outside available to use. And just like Tinnis, just a little bit deep into the chicane. And that's a big bump off the track at the final corner, so Guido Christ will go again. He will have time for 3 laps if he has the fuel. See, do we have anyone else further down the order than we'd expect currently? J Turbo, I'm sure, will be looking for a bit more time as well. Where's he on track? Just coming up to the hairpin. And that is the deeper line into the hairpin. I'm not sure that was thoroughly intentional. It looked like a little bit of a correction, and then just ran a little bit deep in. Potentially not a push lap here. It doesn't. Yeah, maybe an out lap for J Turbo. It doesn't quite feel like he's pushing the car to the limits there. Just a little bit gentle on the throttle. I could be wrong, but I think he'll be coming around to open a lap as we go back to the battle for pole position, and Jazzman currently in a comfortable 6/10 advantage. Still looking to push on for more lap time though and take that further out of reach. Tinnis just opening a lap in V2 as well. Michelin Man just coming across the start finish as well, so 2 laps left for Michelin Man to do something about that 7/10 gap. PS Vid's currently in P4 with an impressive lap time there, just the 8/10 off Jazzman. I'm sure if this qualifying session ended now, he'd be very happy with 4th place. Couple of little gaps down Don Michelo, P5, Monreal P6, and then it gets very close all the way down from 7 to 17, separated by just over half a second. So and that's a big smash in front. I think that may have been Bleeding Sunrise. Didn't quite see which Porsche that was, but possibly Guido Christ, actually. Yep, Guido Christ back in the pits, so that will be Guido Christ qualifying over, and that is going to be a big disappointment. P22 for Guido Christ. Let's join back with J Turbo on his penultimate lap. Is it enough to get him off from the bottom of the pile? It is an improvement, but still P23, so 1 lap left for J Turbo to try and find something. As Tinnis climbs to within 2/10 of that pole position, but not quite into the 1 minute 58. So Jazzman still provisional pole as we stand. Lyric Sim Racing will come across the line, and if he has the fuel, I think he can do one more. We've got a couple of cars behind as well, and that is Lyric Sim Racing done in well, it was P11, now already pushed down to P12, and back to the pits. Bleeding Sunrise coming round for his final attempt, currently P9. Can he improve? Couple of tenths would gain several positions, but it's not there, and that's P9 for the time being for Bleeding Sunrise. Have PS Vids and Don Michaelo coming through now. PS Vids across the line and improves beyond Michelin Man, so into the top 3. Don Michaelo stays P5. Does Michelin Man have an answer to get back into the top 3 after that very strong lap from PS Vids as the camera tries to pick up Michelin Man? Coming through the middle sector of the lap at the moment, needs to find 0.06 of a second to retain that position in the top 3. We'll also keep an eye on Tinus as he comes across the line and see if he can improve to take that pole position. Quickly jump across now. Tinus crossing the line, improves by 0.5 tenth, but not enough, remains P2. And it's all down to Michelin Man now. A lot of curb again, but that McLaren quite happy there, not struggling across those curbs at all. The tight line to the start-finish line again. Can he jump back to 3rd? Can he get further? It is P3 for Michelin Man, so fending off a late challenge from PS Vids for the top 3. And as suspected, Jazzman, Tinus and Michelin Man in that top 3, but it was mighty close. PS Vids with a very good effort there. And then Don Michaelo P5, Bonival P6, Scott Fell P7, Rick MotoGP with a very strong qualifying there, P8. Bleeding Sunrise, I'm sure, will be slightly disappointed, P9, and Skov as well. Been very similar pace to Don Michaelo in the first 2 races, and 5 positions behind at the start of this one. And Mr. Moosington and Lyric Sim Racing, P11 and P12 in those Ferraris. Matthew Asbrook, Joe Powell, McQuiz, 13th, 14th, 15th. Lucas Robbe down in 16th. Again, we'll be looking towards the Porsches in front and feeling like he maybe could have done a little bit more, but at the same time, we have Guido Christ down in P23, who absolutely knows there was more in that, but didn't put a lap together. So we will see. It will be another comeback drive for Guido Christ, which seems to have been the theme for the season. We've had a couple of drivers with some struggles so far. Matthew Asbrook in that Lamborghini with tough races, round 1 and 2. Technical issues with his pedals in race 1, and then just an early spin followed by a pit stop mishap in race 2. So we'll definitely be looking for a strong start, a clean start, and keep it in that mid-pack, and then look to potentially move forwards later on. Meanwhile, at the front of the pack, Jazzman with the pole position. Took pole position at Spa, but lost the lead early, and subsequently made a mistake there. Managed to fight back through to P3, but he will be definitely looking for his first win here, and the pace is looking strong. Only Tinus within 0.5 second of his qualifying time. So maybe just the 2-car battle for the win this week. We will have to see. Plenty of racing to be done. Still the outside possibility of some weather, looking overcast here, but weather forecast showing no rain in the first half an hour of this race. be heading towards the formation lap soon. Final setup adjustments, strategies being planned. It is another 1 hour race with a mandatory tyre change halfway. Well, doesn't have to be halfway, but a mandatory tyre change, refueling is allowed, so I would expect the majority of the drivers to be doing a pit stop around the half-hour mark, fresh tyres, refuel, and go again. Obviously, the only
20 seconds.
reason for doing otherwise is to hope for some rain in the second half of the race, but
10 seconds.
a very risky strategy, unlikely to really bring any benefit, so not a lot to be done strategically. This will be all about the all about the pace on track and potentially some undercuts possible. We will see if anyone goes for that early pit stop. Worked out well for McQuiz last week in Zandvoort and managed to jump 3 or 4 positions in that pit stop phase. Obviously the Zandvoort conditions and track making overtaking very difficult. Once again, Suzuka not the easiest for overtaking, so that undercut may well be brought into play for several drivers to try and gain some positions. Some racing to be done. We've got the race start for the drivers to negotiate before we can start thinking about that. And through the S as they go on the formation. All nice and calm this time, but there will be some jostling trying to get into that position for the first race, first lap of the race. It will be all just sorting itself out. Turn 1, very inviting to go in 3 wide, but obviously a double apex, really, turn 1 and 2 can promote some tricky moments and some incidents. We have done okay in the first 2 rounds to keep it relatively clean, so fingers crossed we will manage that again. We don't want to see drivers in the pit lane at the end of lap 1 to repair damage. Much rather see them battling it out throughout the hour of the race, all nice and close. So we'll see who takes the lead down into turn 1. A fairly short run off the launch into the first corner, so you'd have to imagine strong chance for Jazzman to lead out of turn 1. Tinnis will be doing his best though. And further back, how much risk is taken by the drivers? How many just go for the cautious approach and settle in and live to fight later in the race? We come down the back straight, it will be heading into double file and grid formation fairly shortly as we get everyone sorted out into position, ready to start this race. There we go. Everyone coming down to get into position now. Drivers at the back, just a little bit more power put down to catch the train. And there we have Guido Christ at the back. Disappointing qualifying for sure. Just doing some last minute tyre warm up, ready to mount his challenge from the back of the pack. But first things first, let's see Jazzman and Tinnis, the battle for the lead off the start. Can Michelin or PS5 do anything from the second row? I would say unlikely down into turn 1, but the Ferrari not always the quickest off the line. We will see. who gets the launch. So here they come down towards the start line.
Green light.
And there we are, green lights. And Michelin Man tucked in behind Jazzman. Tinnis wide round the outside, has got the position for now, but Jazzman's still on the inside. Tinnis will get the inside for the first of the S's, and that may be it for Tinnis, as we have someone off in the background already. Spearing out of turn 2, that is the 296, that is Adam off and into the wall. So disappointment early on, but Tinnis into the lead off the start here, and nothing really that Jazzman could do there, just clean round the outside into 1 and then had the position into the S's. As we have more cars off behind, that is Matthew, I believe, as well as lost track exactly of the numbers. We've got Slicker, Matthew, and 75 Robbe off at the back. So not a good start for those guys. Definitely a good start for Tinnis. Meanwhile, PS Vids lost a position to Bonneval. Any other big winners or losers off that start? We've got Don Michelo right down the order into P19. He started right up the front in P5, so that is disappointing, as PS Vids immediately trying to reclaim this position. Round the outside of 130R will be brave, but oh, and Bonneval, that is a big moment on the curb, and that is a big hit for PS Vids, and he will just have to sit there. That is not where you want to be. Massive damage to that car. Will he be able to bring that one back into the pits? It looks like he can, but big damage, and that is a big race compromising incident there. Also to note, J-Turbo Deluxe with the drive-through off the start line for speeding on the race start, so that's not a good start for him. Guido Christ, meanwhile, making the most of the incidents, as well as a strong start by the looks of it, up to P15 already, as the top 3 break loose early on. Obviously that crash with Bonneval, and PS Vids has opened up that gap slightly. Bonneval surely has some damage from that as well. Just looked like he got over the curb slightly, and unfortunately PS Vids was the big loser in that. Looked to me like Bonneval had backed out of it and tried to give PS Vids the corner, but potentially just too tight on the apex and jumped off the curb and out into the line of PS Vids. Now he has Scott following him very closely and looking for any opportunity. Very close, different lines there through Spoon, but good run for the Porsche out the corner, and Scott looking for a similar move to PS Vids. I'm sure he will have seen last lap what happened, as Bonneval squeezing incredibly tightly there. Will be probably not looked on too kindly by Scott there. He did appear to be wide onto the right of the track and just squeezed out, so no space really given there. As we seem to have another incident behind, as Skov is going slowly. Was that contact, or was that just an individual mistake through the chicane? But either way, Skov dropping down the order, and that's down to P16. So not a good start for Skov or Don Michelo. Don Michelo actually has been into the pits early, so potentially some damage on that opening lap, or potentially just with that position loss has decided to jump early, get on some fresh tyres, put in some good laps. But There are cars in front, there is traffic to deal with. It will be a long road of recovery there. Meanwhile, out front, Jazzman just settling in behind Tinnis. Gap still remains under a second, but not really looking close enough to mount a challenge just yet. But disappointing for Jazzman. I'm sure he'd have been hoping to maintain the lead and build a gap in this first stint and try and get that first win. Meanwhile, Scott Fell has cleared Bonneval after that very close moment down into 130R. So Bonneval may be struggling a little bit with some damage after the earlier incident. And again, Bonneval just squeezing into 130R, leading Sunrise this time on the receiving end. We can't concentrate too much in front as Rick MotoGP right in behind as well, and that is the view from behind. Rick MotoGP and Joe Powell both hunting in behind if anything is to happen. I thought we might be side by side there. Bleeding Sunrise a little bit on the deep line into 1 and 2, just leaving a bit of space in case Rick was there, but manages to maintain P6. But really we'll be hoping to move forward and gain that P5 and keep with Scott as much as possible. Very similar pace throughout qualifying. That fight for top Porsche will be a close one throughout the race if Bleeding Sunrise doesn't get held up there. As we've had another spin further back, looks like McQuiz through the S's has lost out there. Brief yellow flag, but back on track. Steering looks to be straight, so no major damage. Whether there has been some contact with the wall or whether that has been just a spin, we will find out a little bit later on with his pit stop. And another early stop, Slicker into the pits. I'm sure some damage to repair from that lap 1 incident. We'll be looking to put some clean lap times in now and hopefully gain some time on those battling in the pack and gain a few positions back potentially later on. Now back to the front, Jazzman putting the pressure onto Tinnis here. So just a couple of laps sat in behind, but now looking to retake the lead of the race. Michelin Man still within striking distance if anything were to happen, just watching 3 seconds back. Doesn't quite seem to have the outright pace of the front two today, but with a clean race, it would be very surprising if Michelin Man doesn't come home on the podium. But what can Jazzman do about Tinnis here? No move into the hairpin, but incredibly close still. Just trying to get that line on the exit. The lapped car of PS Vids after that big incident early on just ahead, so Tinnis will be very aware of the car in front and hoping to get a clean move to lap PS Vids. Jazzman will be looking at that as an opportunity, I'm sure. Nothing doing for Jazzman just yet. Very close, but very tough. And we will jump back to this battle for P5, which is inviting more and more cars in. Joe Powell 3 at the back of this pack for now, but Lyric Sim Racing in P9 closing in, and the 4-car battle will turn into a 5-car one very shortly, and there are plenty more behind that looking to gain as well. Bleeding Sunrise not with the best run through the final chicane. That's not the first time that the gap down the start-finish straight has been a little bit larger than the rest of the lap. Maybe Bonneval starting to get into the rhythm with that McLaren. Still unsure what the level of damage would be from the contact with PS Vids. The contact itself between the two cars wasn't heavy, so very much drivable for Bonneval. Definitely a move brewing somewhere in this pack as JP3 tucked in under Rick's rear wing, but not the really right part of the circuit for overtaking. The opportunity coming up is into the hairpin, but it does require a good run or quite a lunge, which is a big risk. And again, nothing doing for any of these drivers as they run on down to Spoon, but incredibly tight racing for this lower end of the top 10. See the slipstream effect down to 130R, but obviously, and a little bit of a lack of concentration there momentarily for JP3, it looks like, and unless that was a bit of desync, that was a contact with the wall, and very lucky to get away with that one, but there will be some damage from that, and judging by the gap, it does look like that was accurate what we saw and not connection based, so JP3 just losing focus on the run down the straight, and that has cost him just under a second, as well as a small amount of damage on that car, I'm sure. Looking back just behind this battle, we have Guido Christ, who started P23 and is already up into P12, so a very strong start after the disappointing qualifying. Skov in front, again has had a slight moment at the final chicane already in this race, so two drivers with some pace here looking to build forwards again in this race. And plenty of cars visible just up the road. The gaps all the way up to even Scott in P4, not a million miles away and out of reach. But the real big battle goes from P5 and onwards, so these two will be looking to close up to Pren in front and then really get involved in that train. Plenty of action already in the first 15 minutes of this race. We've had 4 early stoppers, which for the most part I believe is the result of incidents. Don Michaelo is the one that I think may have gone for something strategically, potentially. Definitely strong pace in qualifying, but I wouldn't expect any stops for the undercut until sort of 40 minutes left in the race, so another 3 laps or so, and maybe we'll start to see some tactical pit stops. Obviously, the fight for P5 very close, and plenty of opportunities with a strong pit stop time in there. Many positions available to be gained. Will someone like Lyric Sim Racing, Joe Powell, go for the early stop and see what they can gain? As we check back in with the battle for the lead, much the same as when we left it. 7/10 the gap at the last split. Looks a little bit closer than that to me right now, but Jazzman following closely and waiting for any slip-up or opportunity to present itself. Tinus will not be put off by the pressure though. Obviously a race winner already this season, a championship winner previously, and he will be focusing on his apexes, on his lines, and knowing that it will be very difficult for Jazzman to do anything as long as he keeps it clean. Once again, very close here between JP3 and Rick MotoGP. Like for like cars, so it will be hard for JP3 to find that advantage with the car's strengths being similar. In fact, not similar, exactly the same around the lap, obviously. With the identical car in front, a little bit of lag going on here, so that will not be helping if that's also the case for the driver. And already this race proving it's difficult to make that move, as we have Guido Christ is off, just rejoining after the Degners, so that strong start looks to have come undone already, and he will be down now to P17, I believe. So that is another disappointing moment. Such a strong start to build his way up through the field, but out of the Degners would do very well to get away without damage spinning there, so we could see a pit stop now from Guido Christ. Not wildly early at this point, but if there is any damage to repair, better to get it done now and give himself as much time as possible to work back forwards again. Is it an immediate pit stop? Yes, it is. Guido Christ in. Careful not to speed and compound the issue, but that is nice and cautious on pit entry. But you have to imagine that's damage then to repair, and disappointing for Guido Christ. Looking back, the battle for P14, just under a second. Matthew with an early spin again this race, second race in a row, but no damage visibly on the car. And just looking to hunt down Adam. Adam also with a moment early in this race. and the pair of them potentially hunting down Dennis Van Eyck, who is having a very strong showing. Just by the looks of it, kept it clean through the opening part of the race and is sat in P13 with Adam and Matthew looking to hunt him down. No real change in the battle for the lead either. That 7/10 gap, just the norm at the moment, and Jazzman will be thinking about the pit stop phase and whether he can make anything work to his advantage in that. And we have Lyric Sim Racing into the pits, and I believe this is the first of our strategic scheduled stops. So Lyric Sim Racing first to jump for that undercut without having an incident first and coming in to repair damage. He was running... Where was he running? I've completely lost track. I think he was just in front of Pren or just behind Pren, so he will be looking to gain on that battling in front of him. Meanwhile, out front, Tinnis definitely not able to drop Jazzman, but at the moment no real pressure being applied. These two obviously get on very well, will be in a party chat together, communicating with each other. They will still be racing each other for this win. There's no team orders at play, but yeah, very much unlikely to be any incidents. The pair of them will not want a coming together. 6 seconds back to Michelin, and they should be comfortable for the 1-2 in this race. But, their priority will be their overall pace, and the battle between them will potentially come second in this, but I'm sure Jazzman would not be afraid to make a move if the opportunity presents itself. Just generally starting to space out a little bit throughout the field. Matthew, however, has closed up to 4/10 behind Adam. And through the S's, just looking to keep it clean and keep the gap. Waiting for one of the overtaking opportunities a little bit later in the lap. A lot of movement in that Lamborghini over the curbs at Degner 1, but all still facing in a straight line. Just not able to keep it close enough for any move into the hairpin. Not seen anyone go for anything there so far today. In fact, the only moves we've really seen in this race so far down into 130R, but pretty much done before the braking zone. Obviously PS Vids did not come off well from his attempted move round the outside of Bonneval. And again, in the key areas, Matthew just a bit too far back. Seems to be that he is strong through the opening of the lap and into the S's, but no overtaking opportunity there. And Matthew chooses the undercut and gets it all slowed down nicely on the pit limiter. That should be a good stop. Just needs to get it stopped into his box well. But we'll see whether Adam responds to that, to the undercut attempt, or whether he sticks it out, trusts his pace. McQuiz also in behind, so the stops starting to come in thick and fast. And Bleeding Sunrise here, big kick out of the back end of that Porsche, giving it everything to stay close with Bonneval at this point. But he may be the next to think about a potential undercut, just 1 second behind. And the pair of them looking to be closing back in to Scott Fell at this point, just 2 seconds from P4 to P5. Scott looking fairly comfortable in that P4 earlier in the race, but the pace dropping away slightly, or potentially Bonneval and Bleeding Sunrise picking it up a bit later in this stint. The top three, however, in a league of their own today, and no answer from the rest of the field. Already almost 20 seconds from third to fourth. Will we have anyone else jumping into the pits? No, the top six are all round for another lap, so nobody taking that risk at this point. Just looking at the weather forecast, no change there, still just cloudy to the end of this race, so there shouldn't be any weather involved, and this will be a simple one stop onto another fresh set of dry tyres. A little bit of a wide moment for Bonneval through Degner 2, and Bleeding Sunrise a little bit closer again now, just looking to keep the pressure on and stay a little bit closer so that next time a mistake like that might give an opportunity for a move. That one not really punished for Bonneval, but can't afford to make another mistake similar to that with Bleeding Sunrise as close behind as he is now. And Tinnis is in from the lead, so Tinnis covering off any undercut that Jazzman might have been thinking of. Bleeding Sunrise now very close on the run down to turn one in the slipstream. Bonneval making that defensive move. Bleeding Sunrise looking to try it all the way around the outside, but a very aggressive late braking from Bonneval manages to keep it on track, and Bleeding Sunrise will have to settle in behind in the S's again, as we have plenty more drivers in the pit lane now for their stops. An opportunity there for Bleeding Sunrise. Did what he could, was late on the brakes himself, but Bonneval impressively late on the brakes and managing to keep it on track. Now rebuilt that gap slightly, so big pressure off just for now. And again, it may be that the pit stop phase is where a lot of the position changes happens in this race. Will we see Jazzman in straight away after Tinnis's stop? See whether he can get through the pit lane quicker and get out into P1 as Bonneval, big slide out of Spoon, and surely now Leading Sunrise will come through as Bonneval has no choice but to tuck back into the slipstream, but a key mistake there, and Leading Sunrise gifted a net P5. And we do have Jazzman and Michelin into the pits. Scott, Leading Sunrise, Bonneval all continue. Oh no, Scott is into the pits, just didn't quite come up soon enough. So Leading Sunrise takes the lead for the time being. And just him, Bonneval and Joe Powell still out on track. J Turbo just coming through the chicane now. Here's our other driver yet to stop, and he brings it into the pit lane as well. As we rejoin at the front, Tinnis has successfully held on to P1. The gap to Jazzman has actually increased by a fair margin. Jazzman, as you can see there, just still within sight of Tinnis, but a disappointing stop maybe for Jazzman. I think that's more than the value of the undercut there for Tinnis, and the gap will now be 3 or 4 seconds or more there, I believe. Michelin Man a further 4 seconds behind. As we'll see as Jazzman comes through this first split. Yeah, 4.5 seconds back, so Tinnis with a bit of pressure off just for the start of this stint. He's also done that lap, got the tyres up to temperature, and will be looking to maintain that gap for as long as possible. As we jump back to our current race leaders, and will they be straight into the pits now? So Leading Sunrise indeed in, as is Bonneval, and GP3, the only driver now still out, and will take the lead for the time being of this race. Looks like we've lost Lyric Sim Racing from this one. Was just trying to have a look through and see who'd made any good gains through the pit stop phases, but yeah, Lyric Sim Racing has disappeared. Didn't catch what happened, whether that was a disconnect, whether there was an incident that I missed, and he is now retired. Dennis Van Eyck still, after the pit stop phases, in P11, but having to catch a big moment there, and has lost a couple of positions as a result. So not an ideal moment for Dennis there, and the pressure on big time from behind. So that was Adam and Moosington already through, and Matthew looking to compound it for Dennis. Looking like a potential bit of damage on the back of Dennis's car there. But holding on through 1 and 2, and Matthew will be finding it very hard to do anything through the S's. But all over the back of Dennis here. Just looking back to the battle for that P5 and onwards, or P4 and onwards, once JP3 completes his pit stop, which he is in for now. Looks like Bonneval has lost out. Rick MotoGP up a position into that net P6. Obviously JP3 was also close in that battle, as Dennis has another wide moment and that allows Matthew through. Robe as well looking for that opportunity. Will have to do something down into 130R if he does want to make it through. Dennis with enough straight line speed for now. This obviously where he made the mistake last lap, running wide, but it's Robe this time in the dirty air struggling. As we join JP3 exiting the pit lane, and that is out just behind Rick MotoGP, so much as he was, no time lost, but not managing to gain by staying out longer. And Rick putting pressure onto Bleeding Sunrise in front for that P5. Some strong results already from these two Ferrari drivers in 6th and 7th this season. Both Tier 2 drivers until very recently. JP3 with back-to-back 9th places at the start of this season, looking to improve on that and get his best Tier 1 result to date. Rick in front didn't race last week, but a P7 in the opening round, and again currently looking to improve on that by one position. And after looking like he was being reeled back in slightly, Scott here in P4 after the pit stop phases and that little bit of battling with Bleeding Sunrise and Bonneval, looking comfortable in clear air again. Hoping to keep those tyres in a bit better shape in this second stint, I'm sure. Just looked like the pace at the end of the stint did drop away. Who have we got battling further back? As that is Moosington and Matthew, I think, has just got through the gap, showing 0.083. That would have been across the start-finish line, but Moosington dropping down a position, and Robe again having made it past Dennis, looking to follow Matthew through. Incredibly close between the pair of them, but no way through in this part of the circuit for Robe. Just has to remain patient and set up the move later on. Could be an opportunity for a dive into the hairpin. Robe incredibly close here, but thinks better of it and will follow close all the way down to Spoon Curve. Just sticking the nose out a fraction just to remind Moosington that he's there, and that is a slight mistake on the exit of Spoon, and they will run side by side down to 130R. Robe with the inside, Moosington with just a fraction of the car ahead, but Robe side by side into the corner, and that is some very, very hard racing, but Robe just leaving enough space there and taking the position. Moosington down another one after gaining a little bit from his early pit stop. A couple of other drivers to mention that seem to be having a fairly quiet race, but in the meantime gaining quite nicely out of it. We have Pren up in P9 here, has been sat just behind that battle for most of the first stint, just a couple of seconds back, but keeping it clean and a good position in the bottom end of the top 10. And Yip 242, another 6 or 7 seconds back, started a bit further down the order, but hasn't really been involved in much from what I've seen, but keeping it clean, keeping it consistent, and currently occupying the final spot in the top 10. The race-long battle for P5 continues. Bonneval now at the back of that battle, having led it earlier in the race. Lost out big time through the pit stop phases in that McLaren. Leading Sunrise obviously getting ahead just before the stops, and then losing a further 2 positions to Rick and Joe Powell in the pit stops. But still there, giving it everything. That approach into 130R at the end of that previous lap, showing that he is pushing hard, trying to keep with these guys, trying to get 1 or 2 of those places back by the end of this race. Up the front, the gap between Tinnis and Jazzman remaining fairly stable, so very, very evenly matched this race. Jazzman potentially just closing in ever so slightly, but a 10th or 2 a lap is not going to be concerning Tinnis at this stage, as he looks for his 2nd win of the season and to take that outright championship lead off Michelin Man. Once again, closest battle on track seems to be this battle between Rick and JP3. These two have been battling away already this season. I believe the first race in Spa, they were both there at the end, close together, and once again there is a battle between them. Agonisingly close down into turn 1 and 2, but again that 2/10 gap still not quite enough to put a nose up the inside. Incredibly close through the S's, and again just a very small distance away from contact at any moment. the TV camera catches up eventually as they run down to Spoon. And oh, that looked like a late move. And did Rick keep it facing a straight line? No. And that looked like an optimistic lunge from Joe Powell in the end to me. Fairly late on in the corner into Spoon. Bonneval, the big gain from that, back into P6. And Pren now right in amongst the battle with the other Ferraris, has slotted in between Rick and Joe Powell. Although Joe Powell quickly back past Pren, but that incident almost certainly on Joe Powell there. Not really alongside into the braking zone, made the lunge into Spoon. Always a risky move, quite a fast corner, and Rick not seeing it straight away potentially, and it did end in the wall for Rick, so it's done well to bring it back onto track and still maintain P7. I think JP3 did wait for him to rejoin in front, so recognised his mistake and let Rick back in front, but obviously that position is lost to Bonneval, and now Pren right in the hunt as well. From one three-car train to another, the battle for P11 relatively close as well. We have Adam currently in that P11 spot, and Matthew and Robbe following through as well. All three of them have made a couple of positions in this second stint, past Dennis, past Mr. Moosington, and now they'll be looking to sort out the order amongst themselves in the last 12 minutes of this race. All appears to be closing in a little bit on each other. And currently Matthew looking very racy behind Adam. Looking to put the pressure on as quickly as possible. The longer he is stuck behind here, the closer Robbe will get joining this battle. Matthew will want a quick move if at all possible here. Bit wide into the beginning of the S's. Won't cost him too much if he can latch back onto Adam again. And immediately he is back with him, so looks like Adam might just be struggling a bit more in that Ferrari at this stage, and Matthew will be very happy to see how quickly after that little mistake he was straight back onto him. But Robbe already behind, closing in, and this will be a three-car battle. All very close behind. Robbe deep on the brakes, flashing through Matthew's rear view mirror there. Robbe pushing hard here, you can see back end stepping out and counter steering right through a left-hander. Very keen to be as close as possible here, and right on the limit of the track. through 130R. Some big moves from Adam trying to defend Matthew, looking for the inside line. Can't do it there, and Robbe still close behind. As they sweep through the S's again, CZ Adam just catching his breath in the section where, I was about to say the section where you wouldn't see an overtake. A little bit of contact there and a second kiss. Do they all make it through? That is Matthew off in the background. Once again, the TV camera not providing quite the best view of that one. At some point I'll stop switching to the TV camera just before the incident. But Matthew, I'm sure, will be disappointed with that one. He had got alongside. Hard to tell who, if anyone, is at fault for that contact from that angle. But just a small contact initially, leading to a further contact. But Matthew remaining ahead of Robbe, so was there inter-Degner contact from behind, and Robbe has allowed Matthew back through. Either way, Adam now with a slight gap and a bit of breathing room for the end of this race, and that is far too early into 130R over the grass for Matthew, and Robbe through into P12. Meanwhile, Moosington behind, watching all this go on and looking to pick up some scraps as well. The pace not quite been there in the second stint for Moosington. Obviously quite an early pit stop for him, but will be looking at the cars ahead and thinking that there may be an opportunity still for a position. Still completely locked in battle here. Rick, Joe and Pren. Pren just a bit of a slide through Degner 2 there. Trying to cling on to the back of this battle. But it does look like JP3 in the number 333 Ferrari that looks the most likely to throw a move here. Does look like Rick may be struggling slightly with the damage from that incident that happened down into Spoon. JP3 unable to hold it close through 130R with the dirty air there. And Pren once again invited back into the battle. Very, very hot into turn 1 from JP3. Will that give the opportunity for Pren? Pren alongside on the right hand side. JP3 still with the inside for turn 3 and just about hangs on. So quite a mistake over the curbs in turn 1 and clearly pushing hard, but gets away with it there and retains P8 for the time being. Up at the front of the field, Jazzman has slowly been reeling in Tinnis, but it does look a little too late. The gap just under 3 seconds as they cross the line, down from 4.5, but Tinnis just managing this one home. Jazzman with a slight moment through the S's there as well, clearly pushing hard to give himself any chance of the win here. Holding fastest lap and took the pole position, but Tinnis comfortable through this race, never really gave Jazzman an opportunity in the first stint, and after the pit stop phases had that gap and has never really looked under threat of being caught. But once again, the big battle at the end of this race seems to come in the lower end of the top 10. Once again, it involves Joe Powell, who seems to have been fighting for these positions all season so far, has 2 P9s to his name, is currently P8, looking for P7, but if he is too ambitious, he could go backwards again and look for that third P9. But clearly, and I think I've commentators cursed him. A big moment for JP3. Manages to get it back onto the track quickly. There will be some damage from that one. Just a couple of laps to bring it home with Yip not too far behind. But will that be a third P9 now? Certainly it looks like anything further up the road has gone. Yep, only two or 3 seconds back. Will be eyeing up that P9, but 2 laps only left, and Joe Powell 3, you would imagine, should be able to hang on. Also under pressure at the end of this race, Matthew Asbrook. That incident at Degner 1 while looking for the move on Adam looks to have affected his car in some way. Didn't see him in the wall, but very hard to tell from the angle we had. Meanwhile, Moosington, pace coming back a little bit at the end of this stint, and 2 laps to try and find something to gain P13. Several battles still to be sorted out. Looks like Rick has just pulled out a little bit of a gap to Pren, but elsewhere Robbe has closed right up to the back of Adam. With only 2 or 3 good overtaking opportunities left in this race now, Robbe will be looking for a good run down to the chicane. Can he keep it nice and close through 130R, right out on the outside, and forces his way to the inside for the chicane, but that is late on the brakes. and has spun round. Through come Matthew and Moosington, so once again the overtaking opportunities have provided more incidents and fewer overtakes. It's been very much a risk and reward situation, but the risk has outweighed the reward for the most part. But we join Tinus as he comes across the line. Jazzman running it close at the end within 2 seconds, but never had quite enough to challenge. Michelin Man, a lonely third place for him today. Not much he could do about the front two, but comfortable from behind. And then the gap to P4, quite sizable. But we rejoin Yip 242, who has closed in to Joe Powell. And Joe Powell will lose the 9th place. That late incident into the hairpin costing him multiple positions, and Yip with a last lap overtake as Joe Powell runs wide. Scott Bell coming home in P4, beating Sunrise 5th. Bonneville brings it home P6. And it will be Rick in P7, Pren P8, Yip with the late game into P9. And JP3 rounds off the top 10. Meanwhile, Adam brings it home in 11th after that late attempt from Rob A. Matthew holds off Moosington for what turned into P12. Moosington 13th, and Rob A with that incident late on looking for P11 ends up 14th. Dennis Van Eyck 15th after running in 11th early in the second stint. McQuiz home in 16th. J-Turbo Deluxe just a 10th off in P17. Don Michelo P18, Slicker P19, PS Vids a couple of laps down after that big early incident, final finisher in P20, and the non-finishers were Guido Christ, Skov and Lyric Sim Racing. But a very exciting race start to finish there. Maybe not a huge number of on-track overtakes, but when they were attempted, there was definitely a lot of action involved in that one. Unfortunately, plenty of contact, plenty of incidents. Not something you always want to see in the racing here. But several drivers making the most out of that, those that were able to keep themselves out of trouble, getting some good results there. And we'll just see if we can get any of the top three in for a quick interview. see if we get anyone join, but yeah, like I said, an interesting race to watch. Plenty of contact was the main thing. A few lap one incidents and continued throughout some very optimistic moves attempted. And sadly, the space not quite there for a lot of them. So we did have some incidents to recover from for many of the drivers. Certainly, Matthew definitely involved early on. Moosington with an early stop, still not sure whether that was incident related or not. Don Michaelo, Guido Christ never recovering from theirs. PS Vids obviously very unlucky to be caught up in the position he was on the outside of 130R. Alright, as it stands, we haven't had anyone jump in for an interview from the podium, so I will sign off there at the end of this round 3 race. We will be back once again next week for round 4.
Green light, go, go, go.
Which will be at Bathurst. As I say that, we do have Jazzman joining for a quick interview, so just before I sign off...
I just saw your invite now.
Sorry, I was just waiting to see, and then very close to signing off before you jumped in. Just have a quick word on that race, but obviously pole position for you, looking for your first win of the season, but just couldn't quite hold off Tinnis at the start, and then looking very close throughout the first stint, but lost a little time in the pit stop, and that seemed to be that, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know the famous Ferrari start.
I did mention it.
The best start on the grid, the Ferrari. And then, Tinnis mugged me off. And then, what happened in the pit stop phase was the lap he pitted in, I absolutely fully sent it, and I spun. And lost 5 seconds.
There we are. I didn't catch that. I wondered if you just had a poor position in your box, but
no, I mean it's a free, so it was, because that was my only chance.
It was the chance. We didn't see a lot of overtaking altogether throughout the field, and when it was attempted, there was plenty of contact, and it didn't look to go well for anyone. So yeah, the pit stops were the opportunity. So it makes sense.
Yeah. So I absolutely pushed over the limit, I think. And then because like I said, that was the only moment, because sitting behind Tinnis, we were very similarly paced. It was just
absolutely
my car. The Ferrari was better in the first half of the lap, and he was better. The Lambo was better the second half. So we just ebbed and flowed within like 0.6. So I knew that was my moment, so I went for it, and didn't pay off. And then I just tried to put some pressure on him in this final stint by just absolutely, again, I was pushing. I'm lucky. I had 2 big moments where I just caught the car, but I tried everything to catch up, but it wasn't enough, and Tinnis drove well today, so good on him.
Yeah. So congratulations, Tinnis. Another victory for the season. That's second win to go along with your P2 from last week, and back into the outright championship lead. So anything to add from your race today?
The start was crucial, and after that it was just maintaining on the racing line, don't make any mistakes, and just keep the pace as high as possible, because Suzuka is just a track where it's really difficult to overtake. And
absolutely.
I was always planning to go around the 32-minute mark into the pit lane. So the only opportunity for Jazz to really put me under pressures was if he pitted in the 35-minute mark,
Yeah.
but he didn't. So at that point, I was like, yeah, I will go early into the pit stop, or like earlier than him. I will have to fresh the tires, so it's really hard to overcut here. And then, of course, he's in the party as well with me, and he said to me,
Yeah.
he made a mistake, so I knew
That took the pressure off.
from that moment, the win was there. I just had to keep it on track.
Yeah. Yeah. And said it looked exactly how you've explained it from my end, and yeah, looked rather comfortable through the second stint, despite the gap closing down slightly at the end, but always looked under control. And yeah,
Sadly for me, it was too under control.
yeah,
I was just controlling the pace indeed. I set myself a target lap time, and I
yeah,
tried to stay as close to that as possible. And I didn't really go for fastest lap or really pushing the tires out of the pit lane, and that worked out well for me in the second stint.
yeah. Well, another strong race, and I say a strong position in the championship for you now. Jazz, I'm sure there will be a win for you later in the season. It's very rare to go through a season without one for you. But
Yeah, well, we can dream. Let's hope.
but nice to
let's
see
hope.
some good close racing at the front in all of the races so far, and you know, a couple of unfamiliar names, new names joining in at round one in that leading pack. Back to the familiar faces in the next two, but it has been good close racing. So we will hope to see more of that for the rest of the season.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Thanks for jumping in, guys, and we will see you next week.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Cheers,
Thank you for
guys.
streaming. Cheers.
No worries. Good night.
Good night.
Right, okay, I will sign off there then, like I tried to before, but that is it for round three. Next up will be Bathurst. We have a 75-minute race around Mount Panorama next week, so be sure to join us again then. But for now, I will leave it there. Good night.